I'd like to call to order the April 20th, 2021 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. And I'll start with roll call, starting to my left.
Brenda Hamstead. Stephanie Butler.
Hodge Patel.
Todd Chernick.
Don Kurtz.
For the record, Kim Keller and Jason Cole are absent tonight. If you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Thank you. Before we jump into, let me go ahead and make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any need for any changes? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda as published, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passed unanimous. I'd like to welcome our latest board member, Stephanie Butler, to our board. She's an appointee by the mayor. So welcome, Stephanie. Item number 5 on our agenda is approval of the February meeting minutes. I make a motion to approve the February meeting minutes as published.
Second.
Any discussion? All those who are present in February and are in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And it looks like we have a couple abstentions.
Abstain.
2 abstains. 1 new board member and 1 board member who wasn't present in February. That motion passed. Moving into item 6 on our agenda is consideration of primary variances. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determination. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these 4 considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance, and B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by that variance applicant. And C, relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good in surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. First item on our agenda for primary variances is V21-06-810 Guardian Court. Would staff please present?
V21-06-810 Guardian Court. Requested variance is to allow an accessory structure to encroach into the rear yard setback and remove the condition set in V2015. The site is a 1.0 acre lot located on the west side of Guardian Court in Manor subdivision. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in rural Milton Overlay District. In August 2020, the applicant received 2 variances, one for allowing an accessory structure to encroach into rear yard setback, and second for allowing an existing fireplace to be located in the side yard. Exhibit A shows the plan presented in 2020. The size of the structure was shown 23 by 25 feet. When approving, the BZA placed a condition to limit the structure to the stated size. The applicant applied for a permit that showed 25 feet by 38 feet size structure in January 2021. As shown in it is shown in Exhibit B. The staff reminded the applicant about the condition and advised to reduce the size. The applicant asked to remove the condition instead, leading to this variance request. Section 64(4)(16)(I) states that accessory structure may be located in the rear or side yard, but shall not be located within a minimum yard. The applicant was allowed to encroach 13 feet into rear yard, and the applicant stated that the request is only for larger size and the 37 feet setback will be maintained. However, the last site plan provided on March 2nd, 2021 at the DRB meeting, it is presented in Exhibit C. It shows the pool house size of 25 feet by 31 feet and the encroachment of 20 feet. Since this is more than what was approved in V2015, it will be considered as a separate variance. The proposed elevation and renderings of the pool house are shown in Exhibit D. Exhibit E shows the picture of the site. It can be seen that the proposed structure will be viewed from the barn and the house on the Westbrook Road. Exhibit F shows the concept plan included in the variance case V2015. On March 2nd, the DRB met and had following comments. DRB recommends getting the letters of support from neighbors. DRB recommends approval. Staff response. Part 1. The proposed pool is larger than previously approved by the BZA, and it is now encroaching 7 more feet into the setback than what was approved pursuant to V2015. It would offend the spirit of the ordinance if approved for further encroachment. Incorporating the existing fireplace required the applicant to change the design. However, the applicant did not do due diligence required before applying for the earlier variance. The applicant is now asking for further encroachment with a larger pool house. Therefore, this is a self-imposed hardship. Part 3. If the condition is removed and the additional encroachment is allowed, the public good is not attained by building closer to the adjacent property to the west. Part 4. The public's health and welfare are not secured, and that substantial justice is not done by allowing more elaborate development than previously agreed, and further encroachment into the rear setback. Staff recommends denial of the variance. However, if the BZA chooses to approve the variance, following conditions are recommended. Provide a 37 feet setback. Provided a 37 feet setback to be maintained where the building is proposed. The size shall be limited to 25 by 31 feet.
Are there any questions for staff? I think I'd like to clarify a couple items with staff. So what we have in our packets received February 15th, 2021, a site plan that's labeled old. Was that the original approved site plan? Which noted a encroachment at the rear of up to leaving a 37-foot build line.
Is that a question?
Yes, that's a question. Is this the original approved site plan?
That is dated July 1st, 2020.
It's received July
Yes, that is,
1st,
yeah.
2020, and then received again February 15th, 2021. We have
It's
two
Exhibit
stamps.
A, yes.
We have two stamps. Okay, so that's the original. And from that, does staff have, and I apologize for not requesting this earlier, the amount of encroachment in square foot?
Not in square foot. We just know that it was 13 feet of encroachment in the beginning.
Right, that's at the closest point. It's a triangle. It doesn't look, as a percentage of the overall footprint, the encroachment looks to be relatively small, meaning less than 25% of the overall structure. That's why I was asking for something more specific. But then my next question is, the site plan that we've got dated March 2nd, 2021, is what is actually now is the most recent proposal,
Correct.
31 feet by 24 feet. And that encroachment, as it's shown on the plan, looks to be roughly 50% of the structure is encroaching in the setback. I'm just using rough numbers. Do we have actual, and I can ask the applicant when they come up, but does staff have actual square foot encroachments numbers?
No.
Okay. Those were my two questions to make sure that we are all reading from the same plans and had a clear understanding. Are there any other questions for staff before I ask the applicant to come forward? Or Brenda? Okay, with that, I'd ask the applicant to please come forward and share with us your plans and reason for this second variance. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Brent Leiby. I'm a contractor on this project. This is Wayne Massey, one of the homeowners that we did this project for.
Okay, welcome. I think, Mr. Massey, you were here last time, so yes, you probably understand the order of business here, which is you would share with us your appeal for this variance. We would then ask questions. We'll move to getting input from the public, and then you'll have a chance to make a closing statement. So with that, kind of help us understand why we're back here looking at this variance again, or a new variance.
Yeah, so the initial plan that we submitted for the V20 variance, the first one, we hadn't completed the plans yet. We hadn't gone completely to architecture, and we presented some preliminary drawings and preliminary sizes because we didn't want to go to the expense of hiring an architect and doing that if we weren't able to obtain the variance. Once we got the variance, it didn't clearly state how much we could go into the setback. It just allowed for it to encroach in it. There was no language and no definition of how many feet or percentages or anything like that. So in designing the plan, the final plans got a little bit bigger. So when we resubmitted, that's when the site plan review realized the size of the plan was larger than the conditions on the variance, which, you know, we thought the variance was more relating to how much it encroached as opposed to the size of it. So so that's why we're back here now.
So then that feeds right into the questions that I was asking staff. What was the original square foot encroachment, and what is the latest square foot encroachment?
So just looking at the site plan, your assessment of 50% of the structure is probably pretty accurate. I was never asked to provide the amount of square footage encroaching, so I don't have that information.
But you're comfortable with roughly about 50%?
Just looking at the site plan, I would guess that's probably pretty accurate.
Okay. And I recall from the original variance request in 2020 that structure, the location, the site plan that was provided, and we did condition approval to that site plan, which is a footprint,
Right.
that you were working around an existing fireplace structure as kind of the anchor point to why you wanted to build in that location or why it made sense to build in that location.
Well, that and the pool and the adjoining hot tub.
Right, correct. Those amenities, and I understand some changes have happened with the fireplace.
Well, the fireplace had some structural issues, so we went ahead and removed the fireplace because it was determined it would be better to rebuild it than try to repair it.
Okay. Okay. Anything further you want to add before I'll ask the members to ask questions, but I want to make sure we understand fully
Yeah,
what you're looking at doing.
So really, the only other comment I would have on is this location, and Shuba was kind enough to visit the site with us, and I think she could confirm the location of this structure is not visible from the street, not visible from neighbors on either side, and mostly visible from the neighbor behind them, who happens to be here with us also and are willing to speak on behalf of this too. All the adjoining neighbors have provided letters approving giving their approval for this structure. Mr. Massey's a good neighbor. Everybody's great friends there, and they're all for it. So I think it's a very minimal impact on surrounding areas.
We're going to put some of the
This is a
sketches
few
up.
photos. This is a few photos that show the existing conditions. I took these photos today.
And I'd also go ahead and show the photos, but I want the original site plan, the new site plan, and the. No, go ahead. You can show the pictures. I think it helps too.
Okay, so this would be looking back behind us at the farm, the Carson farm. That again, the closest structure is kind of behind the tree to the left is a barn. The house is. What we're proposing, this is the view back towards the house. And the reason we're trying to, we're in a corner, in a pie-shaped corner, so the angle of it to fit the house and to look back is very important to us. Looking down onto the pool, and you can see the amount of trees from the backyard. You can't see another rooftop in the manor.
Those are helpful, and I think
From the front yard, there was one front of the cul-de-sac looking into the front yard. So to the right of the house, from the front porch, the elevation, the pool cabana is 15 feet below the front porch.
and that grade continues to drop to the rear of your property
That's correct.
before it then rises again with your neighbor at the rear.
Yeah, it goes to a pond in the farm
Yes.
before it goes back up.
All right.
Yes.
And then, staff, if we could please put the site plans up so the public has the benefit of seeing these. We do have, besides folks that are here, we are running this meeting and recording via Zoom as well. And so from that, you can see where I was questioning the original amount of encroachment is just that little small pie shape there at the left side. That's what was originally approved from a footprint.
Right.
And then the most recent plan for this variance is what, Shuba? The next one? This is for today's variance. And that dashed line there, where it says, there you go. Okay.
We're trying to ask for 30 feet there instead of the 37 feet is what was original. Just the structure and how we're trying to build it with the boulders and the very natural looking setting. 7 feet was big.
And that's a tricky basis of measurement, right? 7 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you look at it in a square footage standpoint, we're going from a relatively small amount of encroachment from the original approved to now 50% of the structure roughly encroaching. That's over 300 square feet.
50% of the original 50-foot
Yes,
barrier? Okay.
yes, the build
I understand
line.
what you're saying.
Well, you're
Yeah.
saying 50% of the structure is now inside the original 50-foot building line.
Correct. Correct. That's what I see. Am I reading the plan wrong, staff?
No, I think you're right.
Okay.
I think you're right.
And the structure, you went from being roughly my notes were 575 square feet originally approved to now 775 square feet. Does that sound right? Okay.
So it's 387 feet encroaching into the 387 square feet if 50% is accurate.
We'll round, but it's 300-ish, square feet encroachment.
Right.
That's fine. Which is a different and more accurate measurement than saying 7 feet, because you understand my point on that?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I just want to make sure there's a lot of numbers that are here, so.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for the applicant? Yes.
Have you looked at possibly scaling down the size of the structure overall? Just with basically the 50% encroachment, that's a significant number for us to kind of contemplate, because there are 4 conditions that we have to meet. And
Right.
that's one of the things that if you can clarify on that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, we did from the first version it's larger, but we did scale it down from what he wanted to do a pretty good bit. But what he's trying to accomplish, what he's trying to do in there, we're kind of at the minimum of what he can do and still make it functional.
One of the driving factors as well is trying to kind of ease this cabana over top of a portion of the pool.
Right.
And see, there's a hot tub up to the left here, and there's a wet bar there in the center.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is go from this rock, I don't know if I can,
You're fine. Yep.
this corner and span across that particular pool with the part of if you look at the cabana, the side with the kitchen on it, so that's going to span that. So that span is like, we tried structurally trying to figure out how to make that smaller without removing the pool itself and redoing that. So we want to span that, and I say span, only half. So that's kind of driving those measurements. When you go to the A-frame part of the building, when you're looking at the drawing here, the A-frame, we've got down to 19 feet, I believe. And I think as you get smaller, if you try to make that 16 feet, it all of a sudden looks very tight. It doesn't open. You don't sit in there and feel like it's open and you're looking back at the pool with 13-foot waterfalls and all the things that's going on there. So that part of spanning that part of the pool has really been difficult of trying to make it smaller, angle it back towards the house.
I trust that you've been working on various alternatives. We won't try to solve problems here. That's not what our expertise is.
That's too bad, because we'd love to have your help.
Staff could help, I'm sure, but not here, not us. Are there additional questions for the applicant before we open up for public?
Question on
Yes.
this plan, it's called sheet A6. It's just the plan of the structure itself. Seems the dimensions are 25 by about 38. And then on the
That was
the plan of the whole layout, it's 31 by 24. What's the size we're building here?
I'm not sure you've got the,
Am I not looking at, this is, I don't know, is there a date on here? This is what is our attachment. Let me see if there's a date.
received February 25th. In that packet?
This sheet A6, yeah, well, we received it February 26th. And- Yeah, go ahead, you want to look? So this is attached. Maybe you want to just show him that. And that size doesn't seem to line up with the size of 31 by 24, unless I'm not reading that correctly.
That's what we just, Shuba, if you please put the one up you just handed out to us.
Oh,
That's the proposed, I believe. Can you put it on the screen?
oh, the one I was...
So I think I can explain. From the write-up that staff did, they originally received and was, I believe it was also shared with DRB, was 38
Okay,
by
that's the one I was looking
25.
at. That's one I,
It
yeah.
was then revised down to 31 to
Right.
25.
that's what we
Okay.
said. We have shrunk it down, and
And so-
the current version that we have submitted for,
Yes, we have it. As small as it goes?
yeah, it doesn't have dimensions on it,
Okay,
though.
sorry.
But in
I
the
was-
color version is the most recent.
Okay. I think they just took mine.
No, yours is there.
Is it on this one?
No, it's the color right there.
Oh, the color one, okay, all right. All right, I got it, that's the most recent.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's give Mr. Kurt a minute to look at that, to see if you have any
no,
questions.
if that's the size we're talking about now, then that's the, let's see, is that the 31 by 25?
Yep. So the plan that we have currently submitted in permitting is the smaller, but 3125.
And I guess, like you said, you've already looked at all the possibilities of, because since it's only 25 deep, I guess, and if you had turned it, it would fit within that line from the 30 to the, just over the 50-foot line there, turned, but you're trying to get it to cover over that little,
It encroaches on the main part of the pool.
if you tried to turn it.
If
Yeah.
you try to turn it,
We-
then all of a sudden you're,
And we have it as far as you can get and still walk past that outer column and walk around the pool. We've pulled it as close to the pool as we possibly can.
My only other question is on the, and I see all the impressive list of all your neighbors that are in agreement with this. I don't see how they line up with the plan. Are they on the west side, which is the back, I guess the back of your property, closest to the area of where the,
closest to the area. or
where you're building?
Is the Carson farm.
Is that one neighbor there?
That's one neighbor there.
Okay.
All the others are everything that basically touches the property, even in front of our cul-de-sac.
Okay, what about so that's the west side, what about the north side or northwest side? Is that person also in agreement?
Yes,
That seems like that's also close on your side property.
yes,
And that person is also one of the people that agrees?
yes, sir.
Okay,
So just to be crystal clear, both of your adjacent property owners, as well as your property owner to the rear, are all in support.
That's correct.
And you've provided staff with letters
That's correct.
Yes.
of that, staff?
So the property behind there, they are present over here to
Understood.
see, have anything on paper.
But to the adjacents, you do have
Yes.
written letters of support?
And I had included them in the packet.
Okay. Does that help?
yeah, I think, and actually in the electronic version that we originally got, there's about 6 or 7 letters, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Which includes the houses across the street.
Okay.
So.
But the interest is whether the west, which is behind you, and then the side property there, if those neighbors are approval letters as well. And the answer you said is yes.
The Carsons who are right behind it are the only ones that will actually be able to see it, and that's kind of why they're here, so.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I do. So were you both here back in August when you were approved for the variances originally? And so what did you think when, because we're pretty specific when we do approve them. Our chairman says specifically and we vote on it. When you left that meeting, what did you think you were leaving with?
The variance, as far as to encroach, but we never, at that point, we never had a structure size. Like we haven't even hired an architect at that point. We were just hand-drawing something, trying to get what we could do to get in. Then when we hired the architect and drew it up, and then again, spanning that part of the pool changed a few feet. And so then when we brought it back, ended up, needing to go through the whole new variance again.
We were naive to the process. We didn't request a specific size. We didn't request a specific amount. We said we want to encroach into the rear setback, and that's what the variance said. And then that also gave the size of the preliminary structure that we submitted. And the preliminary drawings were hand drawings that Mr. Massey had drawn himself mostly. So we hadn't finalized the plans, but again, I apologize. We didn't fully understand what our variance was. All we knew was we wanted to build the structure into the rear setback, and that's what we were requesting.
Okay, so I guess I have a question for staff then. What is sent? Are they mailed something that says here's the conditions?
Well,
Yeah, so Shuba wasn't in this position before, but typically we would send a letter with the conditions or what was the motion that was made, the conditions that were made for that variance, and send it to the applicant.
I mean, is that possible to pull that up? I mean, did that say, because specifically the variance was awarded for a structure that's 23 feet by 25 feet?
well, I can only pull the action report that has that condition approved. So that's where I came to know that there is a condition on it, and pulled them aside while they were applying for a permit, building permit.
I think if I can clarify the question, was the condition to make it site plan specific? Meaning, based on the site plan dated July 1st, 2020, the footprint that was shown, was that one of the conditions?
So the condition needs to be 23 feet by 25 feet in size per site plan by McWorth Gilbert Anderson, dated, received July 1st, 2020.
Yeah, does that address
Yeah, limit the
question?
structure to the stated size. I'm just wondering if they received that information, did you receive that information by mail so that you were aware that that was the variance that you received?
So we received the variance approval letter from the city, and I think it stated that size in there at that time.
And then my other question, to me, I haven't had it answered what the hardship is. It looks like when I'm looking at these plans that the first one, you had to have the variance for the fireplace, and now you don't need that. But the whole structure would have been a little different because the fireplace would have been over in the side yard, and now you've kind of had to push it with the fireplace in the back of the structure. Correct? And is that what's moving it this additional 7 feet?
So basically, the project has evolved from a conceptual plan with a goal of using an initial fireplace to a plan that'll work for the Masseys and fit in the site the best, be the least intrusive on surrounding properties. So it hasn't been a clear-cut process. So we've diligently tried to do this in the least noticeable way that we could. And, we feel like, with the support of all the surrounding properties and the location of this and the limited visibility of it, we didn't think we were being unreasonable. We were naive to the initial process and what the size restrictions were, and I apologize for that. But the goal all along has been to make this, blend in with the surrounding area, and it seems like we've done a pretty good job of that. So how we got to this point, I apologize. We're taking up your time again, but the goal all along was to make this look nice for the Massies, look nice for the people around them, and give him enough room to actually use it with his existing pool.
Well, it's your project's beautiful. I'm not understanding what the hardship is, though.
I think what Ms. Hampstead's expressing is, as a board, we don't necessarily make decisions based on feelings or likes. We make them based on those 4 variance considerations. And so one of those happens to be impact to the surrounding properties, and you're demonstrating that piece. But there's 3 others that also need to be met, one of which pertains to the hardship regarding the specific piece of property. And I think some of the self-imposed nature of that is causing us, I'm speaking for you, but it's causing me a little bit of consternation.
My hardship is I'm just getting old and I don't want to be in the shade more than I want to be in the sun.
Okay.
I built this pool with my hands 15 years ago.
And it's sensitive. We understand the sensitivity because, it's your home, and it's undoubtedly, as we've seen, it's a beautiful setting. So no judgments are being made on that.
I have one other question. If we were in the process of a motion, how would we reference this green colored? It doesn't have like a date or anything on it. Is there a reference number or something we can reference this to?
I've included all the drawings in the staff report. These are extras.
Okay.
But these are the actual most current.
Yes.
So should we label those? Maybe ask the city attorney, should we identify those as exhibit?
Normally,
From the sounds of it, we should give it a label, and we'll just make sure that it gets into the record as a specific exhibit.
can we call this exhibit whatever? What would you like to call this one exhibit?
So they received just today, so you can later.
Well, do you have a stamp with you, or
Exhibit.
Yeah, no.
So this is Exhibit A,
Yeah.
vote all these?
correct?
Three pa-
And it's
or
3
just a-
pages
Okay.
of
The
elevations.
last exhibit was F, so I would say you would say G, because if
G?
you said A, B, C, D, F, G, it'd get confused with the staff report.
So this is Exhibit G, 3 pages.
Of elevations and floor plan.
So I think you all saw the letter that Shuba put up for you that was very specific to the size and location and
Yes.
addition to the site plan, so.
Yeah, it's just, we're used to putting something down as exhibit number. It's okay, that's good, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we'll hear from the public, and then you'll have a chance to close this out before we make a motion. It sounded like we did have someone here to speak in person from the public. Do we have a public comment card, staff?
Yes, we have one,
For the record,
Ellie and Steve Carson.
I think this is going to be accurate, but let's make sure that we set aside time for those in favor and those opposed.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even follow my own rules, our rules. So yes, we have now moved into public comment. In that, we'll start with those in favor, which is carrying on in support of the applicant. I'd ask you to please be sensitive to time. We have a 10-minute limit overall. We've already exhausted that in the applicant presentation. If there's any opposition to speak, they also have an equal amount of time to speak in opposition. So with that, if you'd please state your name and address for the record.
Steve Carson, 15785 Westbrook Road. We're the farm directly behind. We're fully supportive and in favor of the plan. Everything the Masses have done in their yard has been absolutely beautiful, and it makes our property look nicer, and looking at the plans that they have for the cabana is going to follow that suit, and we're excited about it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment?
No,
Any in favor?
no,
Is there any on Zoom?
No.
Okay. So with that, we're back to your opportunity to make a closing comment, and I would ask you to please be brief.
Just to be, I know you said public comment and then in favor. Do you call, just make sure there's no one opposed?
I thought I did. Is there
Yeah,
any
there is no
public
one.
comment in opposition?
no.
None. And there's none on Zoom. Thank you. Closing comments before we then move to close the public comment and take a motion.
Again, I think that all along we've tried to make this an enhancement to the property. We think we've got that. We think we have full support of all the surrounding neighbors. And as far as hardship, that feels more like a term for these kind of variances. There's not a true hardship, but this certainly will make this project much nicer and blend in if we're able to do this.
Okay, thank you. Before I close the public comment, are there any final questions for staff or the applicant? All right, with that, I'll make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second on case V21-06.
I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to approve V21-06 in accordance with the site plan received March 2nd by the City of Milton by McWhorter and Anderson, and in accordance as well with Exhibit G, which is 3 pages, elevation, floor, and the floor plans. There's 3 pages to that document. The 4 conditions, I believe, have been met for the variance, 3 of them based on the fact that we have all the neighbors, it seems, with a number of letters agreeing with this project. So I believe it meets the ordinance intent. I believe it meets the public good is not hurt because the neighbors agree. Public safety and health are secured. And as far as hardship, maybe the word hardship isn't correct, but it does have exceptional and extraordinary situation concerning the property size and shape. So that's my motion to approve.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. So that motion doesn't carry. I'll open the floor again for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion for petition number V21-06, 810 Guardian Court, to deny the request for the variance. We do have 4 items that we have to be able to meet, and the self-imposed hardship is just one of the items that I haven't seen demonstrated this evening that we're able to meet based on the information from.
Okay. Do we have a second? Mr. Patel, you raised the motion. Is there any discussion and further supporting your request to deny or your motion to deny?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Is there any other discussion regarding the motion to deny?
Just supporting what Hodge said, I don't feel like the hardship has been demonstrated, and I think that's an important part of what we're doing here.
I'd like to just read again that particular bullet point for the variance consideration. It says, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or distinct application of the ordinance would be create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the applicant. I don't think that means that there's a hardship in terms of that he shouldn't be able to put a pool in. You know what I mean? I don't think hardship, just because he wants a pool, he shouldn't have to show that it's a hardship that he wants to put a pool in. This says, is there an extraordinary and exceptional situation pertaining to the particular property that he can't meet the strict conditions of this relief for the ordinance? I think the answer is yes. He can't he can't put the pool in because of the shape of the property. As far as the other three, I think I stated there earlier, you have the neighbors all agreeing, and so the public good is not going to be hurt. Relief would be in the public good, actually, because the neighbors like it. I don't see any public health problem. So as far as that one, in terms of hardship, yes, I don't think you'd say there's a hardship to him, but on the other hand, why should he not be able to put a pool in? You know, I mean, I don't know.
You mean a pool house?
A pool house, I'm sorry, pool house. He has a pool, I'm sorry.
And
I don't think we're interpreting hardship correctly here. The hardship is that he can't put a pool in that he wants to put in, and that everybody agrees to is not a problem to the community.
so
Why-
Don, let me clarify.
Yeah.
We approved variance in 2020, allowing him to build a pool house per what they requested, 25 by 23 feet, which is 575 square feet. That was approved. So he's allowed to build a pool house according to what he requested. The question now becomes, he now wants to make something bigger. That's self-imposed. He wants something now bigger than what he originally asked. So we're not saying you can't have a pool house, but we are finding it hard to justify, hard to justify the need, the rationale, the case to overcome the self-imposed nature of making it bigger.
I understand. I just don't see that we as the board, or even as the city of Milton, should keep somebody from doing that, what they desire to improve their property, that seemingly all the neighbors don't have a problem with. It improves the property, what we see, to be a beautiful piece of property. What is our real rationale for keeping this person from doing this? I don't understand the rationale why we would say, as the city, you can't do this. Just because he asked before and we said okay, and now he's come back a second time? Yeah, he probably should have asked the first time. We did approve it, but he's come back a second time. I don't see why.
So
I don't see why the city of Milton should keep somebody from doing this when everybody around there doesn't object.
That you're entitled to that opinion as a
My
board
opinion.
member, and that's fine. I have issue with the self-imposed nature and the fact that in the end, what's being requested is a 50% encroachment, meaning 50% of the project is going to be encroaching into the buffer.
But who's hurt?
That's only, I'm telling you why my interpretation of the hardship and why I have issue with it. So I think we've debated the merits, and I certainly appreciate your perspectives, because these are not easy decisions. But I think we're thoughtful in upholding the four considerations, which is what we're charged to do. So with that, we have a motion to deny case V21-06 with a second. All those in favor of denial, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
That motion to deny is passed. Okay, and I hope you appreciate that we don't take these cases lightly, as you heard from the discussions tonight. V21-07 is the next item on our agenda, which is 15785 Burdette Court. Would staff please present?
V2107, 15785 Burdette Court. Requested variance is to allow structure to encroach into the rear yard setback. The site is a 1.20 acre lot located on the west side of the Burdette Court in Milton Crossing subdivision. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. Exhibit A is showing the proposed accessory structure on the site. It also shows the pool that was permitted in January. The primary and secondary septic lines are shown on the site plan with a natural watershed area in the middle of the property. For section 64, 416I, accessory structure may be located in the rear or side yard, but not to be located within the minimum yard. The applicant wants to build an accessory structure in the rear, 25 feet from the property line. The minimum rear yard setback is 50 feet in AG1 zoning district. Therefore, this variance is requested. Fulton County Health Department approval stamp is for the house only, since all the other structures are not proposed with the house layout. The staff proposed the other locations for the accessory structure. The applicant maintained that all the other locations are undesirable. The applicant presented Exhibit D to the DRB on March 2nd, 2021. It is showing that the northeast corner of the property is undevelopable. The staff visited the property on March 15th and saw that the corner is being prepared to build a batting cage. The applicant wants to pursue the request for a variance to build the accessory structure in the rear setback as shown in Exhibit A, and in Exhibit B is showing the plan and the elevations for the proposed structure. Exhibit E and F are the pictures taken by the staff on site visit. Exhibit G shows the batting cage, pictures taken by the code enforcement staff. Design Review Board met on March 2nd, 2021 and had following comments. DRB recommends getting letters of the support from neighbors. DRB recommends including pictures of a backyard in the packet. DRB recommends approval. Staff response. Part 1. Relief, if granted, would offend the spirit of the ordinance since the proposed structure could be built on the other appropriate location outside the minimum setback. The purpose of the setback is to leave certain distance from the neighboring properties even when the neighboring property is not developed yet. The topography of the site is not challenging for the construction of an accessory structure. There are other locations on the site where the structure could be built. The watershed area is not any type of stream buffer. There is no extraordinary hardship caused by the variance applicant. Relief, if granted, would cause detriment to the public good and surrounding properties because the proposed accessory structure is closed to the rear property line and may negatively impact future uses of the property on the west. Part 4. The public safety, health and welfare are not secured and the substantial justice is not done when property is developed without minimum setbacks. Staff recommends denial of the variance.
Are there any questions for staff? Okay. Without questions for staff, I'll ask the applicant to please come forward. If you would, state your name and address for the record and help us understand what you're looking to do with this project.
Sure. Hi, my name is Greg Tinker. I'm the owner of 15785 Burdette Court. And we have a petition to build a barn. I think I called it a barn in the actual building permit request, but it's actually more of a shop. No live animals. All right, so let me put this down to kind of everybody a clear visual of what we're talking about. And I also have a 7-second video. As you guys know, a picture is very difficult to show topology map. But in this diagram, this is a topology map from Fulton County showing the watershed that was mentioned in the report. And I'll have more pictures here in a second so you can understand the pool that is currently being permitted and built. The primary septic field, as outlined in this diagram that you see on the screen, is not viable. It could not perk. So we could not use that. It had to use the primary field or secondary field, which is in the back of the lot, which I am pointing to now in this diagram. So this is where the field line resides. It is not a traditional, or what I would consider a legacy field system. It is a singular, what they call infiltrator, large system, and I have a photograph of that showing that. The key component of that is what's known as a distribution box. The distribution box sits here in this corner. I have a photograph that I'll show, but now you guys can see I can't build on that side of the property because that's where the field is. And secondly, it's where the distribution box is, which is also why I decided to put my son's batting cage there, because it's a temporary structure and I can pull it down if we need access to it. Let me switch off of this. For record, I should mention, I have again, a barn plan. Let me zoom out here real quick. Yeah, so it's a simple barn of current dimensions of 24 by 28. This is what's being permitted, albeit we may make it smaller at 22 by 24, just slightly smaller. We're not yet determined. Reason for that is about keeping trees, but I'll show you that in a second. This is what the structure would look like. It is a board and batten structure. It will look like our home. It's not one of those smaller. It's a nice facility is what I'm trying to articulate. The doors are sliding barn doors. It's not drawn that way, but it's actually a sliding barn door to make it look cool. Match our farm style home. Next up. This I made mention, and I'm going to put it, let me zoom in. I can here to make some adjustments.
It's showing up good.
Okay, you can see that?
Yes.
So I spoke of the infiltrator. This is what it looks like up on the top of our property. I'll give you some more photographs in a second, but I wanted you to see what was in the ground. It's important to note that this is the distribution box. I'm taking a photograph of it shortly there, but I'll explain where it is in the top right-hand corner in a moment. This picture this is me standing in the, how do I articulate this? So if you're looking at this diagram here, I am standing right there.
If you could slide it down just a little bit. Go ahead. Okay.
Standing about right there on the 50 foot off the fence, 25 foot off the side setback is where I'm standing to take that photograph. We want the barn, i.e. shop, to be located on the opposite side where there is no field lines and there is no distribution box. I have stakes in the ground to kind of show this. You can see in this diagram here, let me zoom in just a little bit, there you go. You can see in this diagram, you'll see 4 corners. Well, you can see 3 in the photograph. Trust me, there's 4. That's a string articulating where the shop currently is sitting at maximum size, 24 by 20, or 26 by 24, I don't remember. But that's where the shop is intended to sit. If I move it, now notice this back corner here, which I'm pointing to with no reference, that back corner here is 25 foot at a minimum off the back fence. This front side of the shop will be at 50 foot off of the back fence. The obvious question, why don't I simply start the shop here and go forward 24 feet? That's the obvious question, because there is a nice clear landing to put it there. Let me kind of slide over. The reason we can't put it there is twofold. One, that's the septic field area. That's one reason. And it's the only septic field we have in the area to use. And two, if I do put it there, I have to cut down those oak trees that are in that corner over there. Those are the last remaining oak trees on the property, and I just didn't want to cut them down. So the hardship is I don't want to use the septic field, and I don't want to cut down the big oaks. I will have to remove 3 trees to build the shop in the setback. It's this small hickory, not a hickory, apologize. It's I think it's an ash. This tree here, I'm pointing to it again. This tree here will have to get cut. Not that one. Just this one here. That one there is a poplar. And there's one other tree that has to be removed, which is this little bitty tree here, the sapling. It's 3.5 inches in diameter. We have a plan to replant the trees, so that's not a concern for us. We're actually planting in close to almost 30 trees around the pool, some very large trees that are coming in. That's a pool plan problem. Okay? So the other statement was, could we not just move it down into the backyard? Two problems with that. One, we can zoom out of this.
You might be doing the best job on this equipment that I've ever seen a resident do, so kudos.
I'm impressed.
I do IT for a living, so I like this little setup you guys got here. It's pretty
You're
nice.
doing great.
But I wanted to articulate this point here, and I'll have a video here in a moment that will give more understanding to this. But in this, what do you call it?
Swale.
Yeah, the area where water goes down. It's a kind of a low trough area, and a lot of water comes from up north of our property. We are in the northernmost section of Milton, so it's very hilly. So when it rains heavily, there's water coming through there. And in fact, we just had to install a French drain that starts here with a grate that goes into the ground, and it comes out over here on this side of our property. It's a 6-inch French drain going through here because the water going through there was washing the sod away. So we put this French drain in there to stop that from happening. And in fact, our neighbor, the Shaw family, my neighbor next door, he also has the same. My water comes out, goes into his French drain, and continues on down the line. So that's how we're keeping that from going away. So I can't put a shop on top of it. Now, one last thing. Let me pause it for a moment. Pause. And zoom back in, go back this way. Right here. This right here video will help articulate topology. Being shown. What I'm trying to show here is we're up on a hill. We kind of go down into a valley. So going in the valley is not practical or conducive. And not to mention, I don't want to shop right next to the pool. It would look kind of weird. The batting cage you see here is just over that distribution box that I mentioned earlier, but this is just sand and a turf, which rolls up in case they have to work on the distribution box. It's not a permanent structure. So I couldn't put anything permanent over here on this side for that very reason. Okay. This kind of shows you from standing at our home, kind of looking through the topology and the pool that is being constructed. I want to kind of show you the landscape of where the options was, and I'm going to pause the video here. Okay, pause perfectly. In this picture here on the screen, top left-hand corner, is where we are asking for the variance to put the shop in a small clearing 25 foot off of the rear setback, which would match our side setback. I think I've articulated that pretty good. Is there any questions I can help answer with respect to where we want to put the shop and why we're asking for the variance?
Question for you. So you're basically foregoing your primary septic field and you're already in your secondary septic field.
Correct.
What is the plan when
we're not foregoing it? It just didn't work. I didn't choose it.
Yeah.
Let me say it that way.
So if the secondary field fails, what's the next option, I guess, is what I'm kind of thinking.
That's why I don't want to put the shop on the field area, because the field area is very big. It is the entire rear of the property. So where the batting cage is very close to the property line, but again, it's not a permanent structure. It's just a net and there, which take it down. That's not our concern. But the concern is from that batting cage all the way across the rear of the property. Let me bring this back down one more time. As you can see let me move this forward. So at 50-foot setback off the rear of the property, which is this line here, at 50 foot off, everything else for the next 75 feet, this distance here is 75 feet, is all field area. So we don't want to put anything in that area. Because you're right, we have a concern if the secondary septic field fails, where do we go? Well, right now, again, I think the system's called the infiltrator.
That's right.
I could be wrong on that.
Sounds right.
But I do know it sits right here today. I have a photograph of it, so if I'm going to put my fingernail, it's here. We can literally put it here. Let me show you that on the picture. The picture says 1,000 words. It's easier. In this photograph. Okay, so you see this this clearing right here. That is where that system sits today. Where it will go in the future is, you see, I'm going to zoom on in here. You see that pole here and that pole here, which is right at the 50 foot off the property at back. In front of that, you'll notice a clearing. There's no trees here, which is where we would put the shop if Fulton County approves us to use that instead of using it as a filled septic area. I don't want to do that because that's my only other perkable ground. So we want to keep that viable for in case we have to put in another infiltrator on that side. So if we move the shop back into the offset or back into the setback and make the rear setback equal to the side setback, we only have to remove 3 trees, and we don't have to worry about the septic system. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions?
So you've mentioned about not wanting to disturb the septic field, and it's now your primary and only. It looks like the proposed location on Exhibit A of the packet, you are somewhat on the septic field there.
I am. Let me move over and I'll show you why.
And then
the reason I did
there's
that.
2 parts to my question. You
Oh, go
also
ahead.
mentioned perhaps reducing the size of the structure.
Yes.
So help me understand both those points.
So the maximum size that my wife and I are comfortable with is a 28 by 24. And knowing what I know with zoning approvals and stuff, prior client, for example, I wanted to give the biggest ask that I knew I would not build a shop bigger than. So it can be smaller than this space here. My wife and I are debating on making it a 20 by 24. But it would be either a 24 by 20 or a 28 by 24 because that's divisible by sheets of plywood, if you think about it that way. So that's where we're going there. Now, why is it turned cockeyed? The reason it's turned catty-cornered in that manner is because the home, we wanted it, out a little bit, hang on. Okay, so the intent here is to keep it as best I can symmetry. The wall of the shop and its decorative design would be in parallel to the rear of the home. That's the reason why it's catty-cornered. And the total square foot that would actually be in the landfill or the septic area would be minimal, less than 20% of the entire structure. At max.
I don't know. I'm going to ask staff for guidance. Can we allow structures to be built onto a septic field?
Fulton County's approval is required for any accessory structure, and they don't have that yet.
Right.
So you're working with the Fulton County Health Department on that?
Trust me, yeah, I got a long ways to go.
All right, so that's...
Once I get this approval, then I have to go to Fulton County to ask for leniency on that small pie. Or I turn the shop and make it on the line. I'm hoping, so worst case scenario, if I turn the shop, I meet Milton City requirement. If I turn it to where the walls are parallel, then I'm in the area, as you can see, but I have to get Fulton County's permission to do. Worst case scenario, the shop will be, I'll twist it and it will be on the line. Worst case scenario. And then I'll probably end up making it smaller because I want it to be less noticeable. There's that problem. It's a twofold problem.
Okay. Are there other questions for the applicant?
I've got one additional question for you. So you just mentioned turning the structure.
Yes, sir.
So is that going to put 100% of that outside of the building setback line? Because right now...
It would be.
Okay.
It would be if I did that, and I would ask if the rear setback is changed to 25 to match the side setback, then I would not be in the setback. But you're right, I would be in 100% in the original 50-foot setback on the rear of the property. That's a correct statement.
Thanks.
So your option, you've said your option to put it in that area that has the big number 8 on it, what do you call it, the drainage area in there or something?
Right there in the middle, the star.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Right.
where that's where that the
French
topolo-
drain is, the French
yeah, that's
drain,
where the
the
French
water
drain
comes
is.
through.
That's where the water drains, and
So-
we've
but
already
why
had to
is that
replace our
totally-
sod twice.
Why is that precluding you from putting a barn in there? I mean, I understand water's coming through there, but is there not a way to build up on blocks or do something to fit it in that space, or is that because of aesthetics?
Aesthetics. We could physically do it. It would be expensive, but we could do that. But then the shop would be. Hang on. Crap. Something I didn't plan on. So as you can see right there, the bottom of the bottom of the trough area, could we put it here? We could. It would take away from the aesthetics of the neighborhood. I don't think my neighbors would even approve it. I don't think the homeowner association would approve it
But it would
because
be-
I'd have a barn or a barn-like structure in the middle of my backyard.
But it would be within your building
Yes, sir.
lines.
Yes, sir. It would be within the building lines, correct. The biggest concern I would have in that space is when the water runs through there. Now I got a French drain. I got to figure out how we put something on top of a French drain. I don't know if we can build on top of it. I don't know that answer.
I have a
That's good.
question. Todd?
Yes, please.
I see several letters
Oh, yes.
of neighbors on Burdette, but I see one opposition letter from the Day family. Where do they sit?
The Day family owns the 167 acres behind us. So that
And I
would be.
believe they're here to comment. They have there's a comment that they'll be allowed to speak. And also, I would just suggest, I feel like we're going down the same road that we were with the other project in the sense that the applicant doesn't have the okay from Fulton County Health Department to come and ask for this variance. So if he goes back to Fulton County and they say no, and you would decide to approve it per what he wanted, and Fulton County says no, then he'd have to come back again. So it's almost in the best interest of everybody, to try to figure out what Fulton County says first and then make a decision based upon
Well, my ask for the board to consider is allowing us to put the shop in the buffer zone, coming back 25 foot off the property, and put the shop there. And then if Fulton County denies it for being literally less than, rough order of magnitude, 18 square foot over that area, if they say no to it, then I'll just turn the shop. And then I'll probably make it smaller, 20 by 24. But right now, the ask is in the buffer zone.
I perfectly understand how you're describing that. It makes it a little bit more difficult administratively for staff to keep tabs and check in, audit the property to see if the as-built is what was approved, if things turn and
Oh, I
change
got you.
size.
I got you.
So we customarily, as you heard before, we will approve according to site plan.
Gotcha.
And your plan references.
Well, let's
in that.
approve the site plan, and then if Fulton County denies it, I'll have to come back. Or if they deny it, then if I make it 20 by 20, if I make it by 20 by 24, then I slide it back 4 foot, and I solve my problem. That's what I'll do. And then I meet both requirements.
Or you could just go to Fulton County first and get their
Yeah,
answer
well-
and then come
Well,
back to
Milton,
us.
I've already asked Fulton County that, and Fulton County Board of Health came back to me and said, "Will Milton approve it?" So I'm in that quandary state right now.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Staff, I appreciate your guidance on kind of the order of events and.
And that's news too, that he just said. That
Right, and it's not entirely surprising to hear that. Chicken or the egg.
Right.
I want to understand upper right corner, if we could show Exhibit D, which is the picture of the backyard.
You're referring to the distribution box?
No, staff will show it. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You've done enough work on that machine.
Get the prize.
You say Exhibit D?
I believe it's Exhibit. Yes, D, and then also be ready with E. So when this picture was taken, I'm assuming it was in early March, this was
Yeah.
referenced? There was no batting cage?
The batting cage, no, sir. The batting cage is, like I said, temporary. It can come up and go down.
And I'm looking at the openness of that area, no trees, the topography is not extreme, and so then in Exhibit E and a subsequent site visit later, or mid-March,
Yes,
the
that's
batting cage is started. So two questions. One is, what's restricting you from building in front of the batting cage, closer to the home?
Steepness of the hill. That's probably the biggest problem I have in the front there is the steepness of that hill. It's a pretty steep hill. I could show in video.
We can see topography from the survey as well.
Okay.
And
It's a 10-foot rise from where if you were to stand in the middle of this, right, if you stand here and you walk up here, it's roughly speaking, I'm guesstimating 10 feet. Topology map shows it. Topology shows it. Trying to figure out how to read this thing.
so all I'm trying to understand is there are alternative locations, which is what
Yeah, we got
staff
to track
is
that line all the way
identifying.
back to here. I know it's more than 6 feet, but okay, sure.
134 and this is 38, so this.
Okay, 6-8 feet. So right here is 132, right here is 130. So it's more apropos to say it's about 130, because this line here, 130, comes around, and right here is 130. Yeah, here you go. So the elevation, starting at 130, this line here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a foot rise.
From the bottom of the swale.
From right here.
Right, which is that the bottom of the swale of your backyard?
25 foot off would put me about right here. So I would be, right at 10 foot.
Okay.
And I guess we could put it in front of the batting cage, but it consumes an enormous amount of the backyard at that point. It's more aesthetics at that. In all fairness, it would be an aesthetic problem.
All right,
Correct.
so I'm not here, as you heard earlier, we're not here to solve problems.
Right.
But we are trying to judge according to those four various
That's also where the
considerations.
French drain sits. The French drain is right. See that little rise right here?
Yeah,
That's where the French drain is.
that would make sense. It looks like a low point there. Okay, so you answered my questions in terms of feasibility with alternate location. Are there additional questions? I understand we do have some public comment. All right, Mr. Tinker, if you'd just take a seat real quick.
Sure
We'll
thing.
address public comment, starting with those that are, we've exhausted a fair amount of the in favor time with the applicant presentation. So we'll start and continue with anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this application?
No.
There is none.
But we have included the letters in the packet.
Yes,
Letters of
and
support.
I'll have staff read those into the record so that we have, it's understood where your support's from. And then it sounds like we do have someone interested in speaking in opposition.
Yes, we have two.
All right, I would ask that the opposition please try to maintain both of your comment periods not to exceed 10 minutes. Okay? I'll be lenient to some degree since the applicant took a lot of time, but and try not to repeat ourselves. So staff will call you up in order.
Miss Melinda Day.
And if you would please state your name and address for the record. we'd appreciate that.
Melinda Day, 15755 Day Road, Milton, Georgia.
Is there a coincidence on that fact that it's Day Road?
Yes, we've been there for generations.
Okay, I suspected so.
I'm all for him having his structure, but putting it right in the variance, if we decided to develop or build a house there and wanted to put a structure and come to you for that same variance, that would put two buildings within that 50-foot variance on either side. If fire or something happened to either one, that could be danger down the road. So it's a little close to, I feel, what would be allowed if I asked for the same thing.
Understood.
Scott Reese, Bromlow Reese and Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. I'm here supporting my relative, Ms. Day, and their opposition to the variance. I understand completely the applicant's mindset on trying to enhance his property to the utmost of his ability. I think the homework necessary to apply for the variance was not necessarily done. If you go back to the site plan that he's showing, he's using the proposed site plan for the house, and you'll notice the initial septic system was originally an infiltration system. Infiltration systems have a reduced amount of area. So he's showing the area in the reserve, which per Fulton County Health Department standards must be a standard old trench system. You'll notice 325 feet, linear feet on the primary system and 500 feet on the reserve system. When he changed those from initial to reserve, if I'm incorrect, please correct me.
Your numbers are correct.
Thank you. So he first needs to get an as-built from Fulton County Health Department for what was installed. So the sketch that he's presenting is probably 40% larger than what was installed, if you do the math in your head on the 325 versus the 500. So the site plan that he's presented is in error. The size of the system is incorrect. So I think there's going to be substantially larger area than is depicted on the proposed site plan.
Larger buildable area.
Yes, sir. Okay. I do not see a demonstrable reason to encroach into the rear setback. There's ample building area, especially after he gets a correct as-built of the field lines as opposed to the proposed reserve system by switching out. The star soil is not conducive for field lines, but there is no reason that it is not suitable for a building to be placed upon. Minor grading in that area would direct the water away from a proposed structure. So I'm seeing a lot of self-imposed hardship and aesthetics of, I really like to be shoved against the back. It's really not what, that doesn't satisfy the neighbor to the west, the Days. So I think there's ample room to place a structure in. If he's concerned about the not matching his house style, that's a simple fix to design the structure aesthetically that it matches the primary residence or the primary structure. So that's a doable thing too. Grading is a doable thing. Changing the septic field, it's money, but it can be done. So there are solutions to every reason or hardship I feel that was presented. So, and I see no reason to place a hardship on the adjoining property when this can be, there's a solution there without having to encroach into the rear. Thank you for your time.
Are those both of our public comments? Yes? Thank you for adhering to my guidance on timing and not repeating, so thank you. Before I ask the applicant to come back up, I did state that we would acknowledge the letters of support into the record. I'd ask staff to please do that, read the letters in terms of name and address of support.
Uh, 15795 Burdett Court, Robin Shaw. 15820 Burdett Court, Jessica. Can't pronounce it.
Looks like Zeitzman.
Zaitan. 15745 Burdett Court. I don't see the name.
Looks like Jim. I can't read the last part, but that's fine. We understand the address 15745.
15725 Burdett Court, Steve Sapp. 15720 Burdett Court, Laura Holland. Those are the ones.
Okay. As the applicant comes forward, I'm assuming you want to make a comment regarding, in closing, can you reference orientation of these letters of support, adjacent, neighbors, across the street? Where is the support coming from?
So the letters of support are coming from my neighbors, both to my right and to my left, right, and then across the street.
Okay.
My immediate neighbor doesn't exist. That house is being built now. I'm talking about the one past that. And then my next door neighbor, the Shaw family letter is in there. That is my next door neighbor. That house is closed, let's say it that way, it's sold. The other one, of course, being built is Patrick Malloy. Patrick Malloy Homes has also given me approval.
Okay. And the neighbor that is adjacent, is that the neighbor closest?
Yes,
to
that's
where
the
you're
closest.
proposing the structure?
Yeah, Mr. Shaw, the shop would literally be within 25 foot of his property,
Okay.
which is our side setback. And I do understand the Days family with respect to their concern about being in close proximity, 50 foot, 50 foot, but every home inside our subdivision is 50 foot apart. So, to be fair about it, we're talking multi-million-dollar homes within 50 feet. But so the intent here of Milton and Milton Ron, and the reason we've been in Milton now for 20 years. I literally lived in Sable Point forever, but we chose this neighborhood because the backyard was large. It was a residence we actually interviewed a few of the homeowners that were there to make sure that we didn't end up in the situation we were in before, because we want to be in a neighborhood where the kids are playing. So I'm a big component of sports. I love helping Hopewell Youth Association with baseball. Hence, my son plays a lot of baseball, so we do that. But my point of that story is the reason we wanted the shop built is to store our lawnmower, y'all don't know what a mule is, but a little Kawasaki mule, and just tools for the pool. So the variance request not to put it in the middle of the backyard is not because it's, yes, aesthetics, that looks bad, but it's more about the drainage problem. It is a concern when the rain comes down heavy. Me, Rob Shaw, and our other neighbors have had a very hard time handling that. In fact, our three neighbors, all the way down the line here, all of us have these now French drains that are slowing the water. And in fact, my neighbor, not Rob Shaw, but the one right past him, I'll think of his name in a moment, his septic system keeps backing up because, again, water flow is becoming a major problem. Can we grade an area? Sure, and it just causes them more water flow, more issues. I'm trying not to cause a hardship to my neighbors because of that, grading issues, especially after us finally getting all the French drains in. So can we do it? The answer is yes. Will my neighbor approve it? The answer is no. We've already spent, he and I, a lot of money on putting all the French drains in. So that was what my concern is. So the hardship is, albeit moving it into the yard does look, that would work. The hardship is handling the water drain and all the French drains, because now I got to solve the water drain downstream, which is my neighbor's yard, and I got to deal with that. So hence the reason we want to go north. I did like the gentleman's comment regarding the Fulton County sewer and having it redesigned. I did get the as-built documents from Patrick Malloy. I did not call Fulton County to get the as-built from their record. I got it from my builder. So I got the as-built as best I thought was needed, but I do like the comment, so I'll have to look in Fulton County and find out what the actual as-built is. But anyway, just wanted to let you know I did ask the builder for the as-built, and that's the document I got.
Is that what you presented us with?
Yes, sir. That's the document I presented.
So to the best of your knowledge, the document that was dated 3/24/20 by Patrick Malloy is the as-built.
That is
for
the
septic.
as-built documents as I asked for them, and that's the stamped drawings. I do know that was second. The primary septic field is legit. It is there. We just can't use it because it wouldn't perk.
Okay. Thanks for offering that clarification.
No problem. My final comment, I don't have anything.
Any final questions for the applicant before, or staff? Okay, you have a seat.
All right, thanks.
And no questions for staff? All right, I'll make a note that the public comment is closed. I do have a question for staff before we do that. In this situation, if the applicant were to look for alternative locations, which might still require a variance, if we were to deny this variance, how might that impact them in seeking another variance, potential variance?
I have to double check the ordinance, but so long as, I think it's 6 months, we'll look.
Yeah, I've got to look, putting it in a different location, at least a significantly or substantially different location, and it's going to be it may be a side yard versus a rear yard variance, so it's probably going to be a different variance if it needs a variance at all.
Correct.
So
They may not be subject to any waiting period.
Right.
Can we clarify that? In your interpretation, are you clarifying that?
It depends on where they want to, the alternative where they want to put it. I mean, if they want to just shift it,
Then it's
that would be
similar to what's already been requested
Yeah.
versus if it's something in a different location that
Right,
still
like
has
if
encroachment.
he did what he said before, where if he rotated it and
Okay.
that would be the same.
I think you understand the
variance.
intent of why I'm asking that question.
Right. I mean, can we defer?
That would be another potential option, would be to defer to allow them to work on a different location and subject to advertising and of that different location, correct?
Sure.
And so I haven't closed the public comment. You raised your hand. I'm all about efficiency here. So if there's something that you feel is really important to our decision, then go for it. But come to the microphone.
The comment I have was to the house attorney, rotating the facility. I'm pretty confident. I don't want to put a setback into the 25-foot because, even I don't want to go closer than 25. I wouldn't want someone coming in closer now on me, right? And our side setbacks are already at 25 foot, so I wouldn't be filing a variance for that. I'm not going to put it in the front yard. So the only viable variance is the backyard. Just put that
Yeah,
way.
all right, that's
Okay.
fair. Understood. Okay, so I think you understand the line of questioning and why I want to get clarification. We either could deny, accept, defer, and even in any of those scenarios, the applicant, if they choose a different location, wouldn't be encumbered by a restriction. If they choose a different location.
If they choose a different location, it may not need a variance
And
at
it
all.
may not even need a variance.
And then
That's what I was wondering on this other side.
Sir, you can't really talk from the audience.
I think we know, we're just now debating the options, so before I close and move the motion. So are we good? All right. I'd like to then make note that I've closed the public comment, and I'll open the floor for a motion in a second.
I'll make a motion for petition number V2107-15785 Burdette Court to defer so that the applicant can possibly find other locations within his property that might work better, work with Fulton County, speak with them a little more.
Meaning Fulton County Health Department.
Yes, Fulton County Health Department.
I'll second that motion for discussion.
Before you defer until the next meeting to me?
Oh,
To the next scheduled BZA meeting,
next, yeah.
which would be May 2021. That's what your proposal is, motion
It
is?
is.
I will second that for discussion. You raised the motion. Is there any discussion you wanted to share?
Oh, just
beyond
what
that?
I was saying, just so that it gives him some extra time to, I think, do a little bit more due diligence on his part before he comes back. Gives him the option to come back if he keeps it.
Is the intent of the deferral to have him look at options to get it out so it doesn't need a variance?
Well, I think the deferral is to, you know, we were wondering about, is it even possible for him to move it, you know, over to the star section there, or can he move it across and not so much into the setback? I don't know. And then you were saying that there were some things that Fulton County Health had questions on, and maybe he needs to go there before he comes here. I don't know if he was completely prepared.
Based on your question, my thinking on this is evolving in the sense that, are we maybe doing a disservice to the applicant if we don't give him clear direction on what he should be doing in that time frame and what our concerns might be? I, for one, I'll express my concern. In its current location, it's almost entirely in the setback, and it does appear that there's other viable locations that would perhaps need no variance or minimal variance. So I wouldn't want, to your point, Mr. Kurt, give false hope that where it's currently located might work if Fulton County Health Department says it would work. So maybe we are better off, given there would be no implications of a wait period, if they choose a different location that might itself require a variance, to just make a decision tonight, yay or nay. In favor
And you had
or
even
opposed.
mentioned a minor, you
Right.
know, variance.
Is minor going to get us comfortable? That's a personal decision,
Right.
right? So, is there further discussion? We'll take a vote on that motion, of course, before we would entertain anything else. Is there more discussion?
Well, I'm just wondering if we might want to amend the motion. She can do that if she wants to, right?
Sure she can. You can. You can make an amendment,
Well-
friendly amendment.
I'm not sure how I would state that. Let me just, discussion first. I think, like Todd was saying, I wouldn't want to defer it, implying that just come back again and tell us the same thing, you know?
Right.
I would like to sort of see a deferral be, you know, state the deferral that we're deferring it because we want you to come back with a workable solution to get around the variance and not need a variance. I guess that's the way to say it. Are we asking him to come back and defer? Well, he wouldn't even need to come back if he doesn't need a variance, right? So again, what are we asking to get back to the
We're
question?
asking him to
That's
have
why I
a,
have come full
question, yeah.
circle on that, in maybe not being as much of a fan of deferring, unless there's something specific, tweak-wise, that we're looking for him to do that would satisfy us.
yeah, and are there really no other buildable options on the property?
I mean, the request is for significant encroachment into the rear setback, and to kind of go through the process of deferring it, how likely is it that we're going to get results? They're going to be significantly different than what we're seeing tonight.
Right.
And if the structure goes into a different location, say near a side yard setback, he doesn't need the variance altogether.
But if he shifts it and tries to stay in the rear setback, like, can he shift it? You know, I mean, I don't know. We're not here to solve problems, but
Right.
is there the possibility that he could shift it a little, bring it up some on, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, less of an encroachment.
Right. You know, or is that another possibility?
From what, I think to Hodges' point, my view on it's roughly 80 to 90% encroaching into the setback.
Right.
That's a lot,
Yeah.
to Hodges' point. We looked at some topography and exhibit, and I should say pictures, in Exhibit D and E, which suggest there may be alternate locations for the applicant to look into, and even moving closer towards the swale, as Don was questioning.
And not need a variance.
And either need a much smaller variance or none at all. And so, given our four considerations, and the one that creates, again, the biggest concern for us is whether or not this hardship is in terms of the size, shape, and topography. We understand there are some, but there also appears to be some viable options that haven't been
Right.
fully explored.
And to take into consideration the opposition of the neighbors.
Oh, of course. That was exactly. So, without further discussion, if that's okay, I'd like to take a vote on this motion and see where that lands us. So, as it stands now, we have a motion to defer with the expectation that the applicant would be looking at alternatives and also conferring with Fulton County, but nothing more specific than that. All those in favor of the motion to defer, say aye. All those opposed to the motion, say nay.
Nay.
I'll reopen the floor. The motion did not carry. I'll reopen the floor for a motion.
Before you go, can we technically get,
It was
do we have
unanimous.
4-1,
No.
or was it 0-5?
I guess I made the motion
Yes, but you
I
voted
didn't-
nay, so that's okay.
and for
Okay.
nay, right?
Wonderful.
Oh, am I
You're
supposed to-
entitled to vote against it or in favor of it.
Oh, okay, I would say nay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
motion,
I didn't think I saw a vote.
Yeah,
motion
I
was
didn't.
denied unanimously.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So failed 0-5.
Yes. So I'll open the floor for a motion and a second. I'll make a motion to deny V21-07, as I don't believe it meets the threshold of our variance considerations, and there are viable alternatives that haven't been explored.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of denying V21-07, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion to deny passed unanimous. Hopefully, we've provided some good feedback for you in your project. As I said in my earlier comment, in an earlier case, we don't reach these decisions lightly, and we've taken into consideration our four variance considerations as well in our decision making. Next item on the agenda is V21-08, 120 Doris Road. Would staff please present?
V21-08, 120 Doris Road. Requested variance is to allow an accessory structure to be constructed in the front yard. The site is a 3.38 acre lot located on the west side of Doris Road. This property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. Per section 64-416I, accessory structure may be located in the rear or side yard but shall not be located within a minimum yard. The applicant wants to build an accessory structure in the front 65 feet from the property line. The minimum front setback for the property is 60 feet. The barn will not be housing animals but will be used for storage of a trailer. The site plan is presented in Exhibit A, showing the proposed accessory structure of 60 feet by 40 feet in southeast corner. The concept drawings are shown in Exhibit B, whereas the proposed barn colors are shown in Exhibit C. Site pictures showing the topography and existing conditions are presented in Exhibit D. As can be seen on the site plan, the house is set in the far back on the property. The creek is located in the middle of the property, surrounded by the wooded landscape. A new building will be required to comply with the stream buffer and non-impervious setback of total 75 feet. There was a barn on the property earlier at the same location. Currently, there is no structure at this corner. Design Review Board met on April 13th, 2021 and had following comments. DRB recommends the approval of the variance. DRB recommends a condition that the barn architecture to be subject to DRB approval before permitting. Staff response. Part 1. The barn will be built in the front since there is limited buildable areas in the side or rear of the property. Also, the barn will be replacing the former accessory structure at the same location. Therefore, the relief, if granted, would not offend the intent of the ordinance. The topography on the site is challenging for the construction of an accessory structure. Moreover, there is a creek located in the middle of the property, and the city requires 75 feet buffer setback on both sides of the stream. These conditions create the hardship that is not caused by the applicant. Therefore, the variance can be granted. Part 3. Relief, if granted, would not cause detriment to the public good and surrounding properties because the design of the barn will be required to match the rural character of the area. Part 4. The public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and substantial justice is done when the stream is protected and the structure is built on the suitable part of the property. Staff recommends approval of the variance. Staff recommends the condition to require the architecture of the barn to be approved by DRB prior to the issuance of building permit.
Are there any questions for staff? From Exhibit A, which is the site plan referencing the location of the home, the stream, the topography, which looks to be steeply sloped, in the proposed barn not housing animals, the accessory structure, although it's 60 by 40, is 2,400 square feet, is secondary to the primary variance in size?
Yes.
And it's hard to read from the Exhibit A in terms of access to that accessory barn. It looks like there may be something along the lower left corner along Doris Road in terms of access. Driveway. Can you clarify that?
It's shown on the site plan as existing access to the previous accessory structure.
Okay. It's very small. I just want to also confirm sequence. One of the conditions, if we were to approve, was to require architecture review by the DRB prior to issuance of a building permit. Would there be a land disturbance permit that would happen before a building permit?
Well, they're required to have land disturbance for 5,000 square feet and
Yes,
more.
so it doesn't exceed 5,000. It would be dependent on the disturbance, whether there would be a need for a separate land disturbance permit, but
Okay, so the first checkpoint or step in the process would be the building permit process before the site
right, I
was
mean,
altered.
usually a LDP or a disturbance permit is part of the building permit if it doesn't exceed 5,000 square feet of disturbance, so.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Are there any other questions for staff? I would ask the applicant then to please come forward, or their representative. State your name and address, please, for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Scott Reese with Brumlow Reese and Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. I'm here representing the Rogers in their application for a variance to allow an accessory structure to be placed in the front yard. If you would excuse me, I'm going to try to load.
While you do that, Mr. Reese, I'm assuming you're Mr. Rogers. If you please state your name and address.
Howard Rogers, 120 Doris Road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, as you see before you, it is the site plan. One thing that I first heard tonight that, so when this lot was approved, it had a 25-foot state buffer, not the Milton 50 and 75. So we are operating under the assumption that the permitted lot with setbacks, and I would like clarification on that because that's going to be a little bit of a problem.
What was that? I'm sorry.
So the lot was permitted and the final plat was approved, or the minor subdivision plat, with 25-foot state buffers. That is what is shown on the site plan.
Correct, if it was prior to the incorporation. So if the plat showed the 25, then we're now considering that grandfathered in.
All right. I just want, so clarification, the statement or the conditions were 50 and 75, and they need to be 25, correct?
Based upon the plat.
However, the stream buffers that are currently, the ordinance regarding stream buffers is currently set at 75 feet. I'm just not following why that's relevant because you're not in the stream buffers in either case.
Because it's only showing 25,
It's
right?
25 that's shown there because it is, so certain properties were approved with an established setback. And this property was created with an established 25-foot stream buffer. And it is grandfathered into that, and I want to make sure that if we go through the process, that everyone understands that that 25-foot stream buffer is what we're operating with, not the larger now current stream buffer.
I need clarification from staff and the city attorney on that.
Is there any implication, no intent
this request?
no intent to develop in either the 50 or 75-foot stream buffer, and there's no proposal to condition it upon that,
Okay.
as far as I know?
So it will not be inside the 50-foot buffer, but so what is shown on the site plan is 25. When you go 3 times that, we're going to move into a 75-foot impervious setback.
So can you please identify that on the plan? I'm following you, Mr. Reese. Can you
Okay,
identify
is my
where you're
finger-
concerned? Is it the little hook there?
Yeah, well, so there's a spring head on the center southern portion of the property.
This is the
Can you point to that on the,
plat.
Is this going to?
with the arrow?
Site plan, that's exemption.
Maybe not.
Okay, here, so here's the arrow on the spring head. And so that is the origination of state waters. State waters being a flowing waters ephemeral stream. So when this property was created and approved, so what I'm following here is a 25-foot buffer. And that is what the lot was approved with that setback. And I don't have a problem going to, and I'm going to defer to the applicant on this. So enlarging that to a 50-foot buffer is not a problem. The additional 25 feet of impervious setback would be a problem. But we're grandfathered in, according to staff and in my past experience, because this was created and that is the setback that was created on this lot.
Okay, here's the situation.
Yes.
The structure that was there may stay there. It's grandfathered. If you take down that structure, you cannot then, if when you take it down or want to put something new up, your grandfathering status for that structure is lost. You cannot replace.
And I understand completely. I'm not arguing law because I'm going to lose. But Milton has a policy that, so if you or I purchase a piece of property and it has a recorded plat that establishes a 25-foot or whatever the number may be, 25, 50, just like a building line. You purchase a piece of property and it has an established building line. The city changes the rules, then your property, the rules don't change. You have what you have.
I think then it's a comma per the city attorney's guidance. The rules
That
don't
is-
change for existing structures. If there are any additions or changes, alterations, they are subject to.
That is-
I'm looking for the city attorney to weigh in. And thank you for raising this, Mr. Reese.
I mean, it's very important
It's
because I don't
very-
want, the last thing I want is to get an approval and the approval is not what we're seeking.
It could mean, depending on how this is determined, a
secondary
two-part variance.
Yes, sir. And that is not what was advertised.
Correct. So it's important that we get clarification. Two-part variance meaning to allow an accessory structure to be constructed in the front yard being part one. Part two may be encroachment into the 75-foot impervious setback of a stream, or in this case, a spring head.
There is no building there now, right? There had been, but there's.
There had been a building there, but it was storm damaged and removed. So if there had been grandfathering there, but that is not what.
And then even then, if it's more than 50% and, yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, I would have to determine whether or not that policy is
okay, that is
consistent with this, but I,
the policy that has been stated from the city has been
well,
that when it's a recorded document, that recording goes. But
this won't change the policy one way or the other.
okay.
And as I'm sitting here, I'm not familiar with the policy.
Okay.
So
Is it your opinion, because this drives how we move forward?
Yes.
Is it your opinion that this should be advertised as a two-part variance?
Well,
or as it's been advertised, sufficient?
that depends if that policy is in fact in place. And if there's a, and if staff, is confident that that policy has been established, that a structure that is grandfathered, the city's policy is to allow a structure to replace the existing structure based on that grandfathered status, I certainly will not, establish otherwise.
Well, let me ask, is the structure that existed formerly, and there's a pad, I believe that remains?
Not completely. It's been.
And was it of the same footprint or size as the
No.
replacement?
No.
So,
I'm reading the code.
I understand.
And the code would not permit a different, larger structure to be rebuilt in place of a non-conforming grandfathered structure.
without a variance,
Without a variance, correct.
which means two-part.
If there's a policy to allow it to be rebuilt, that's one thing. I don't know, I'm not familiar with the policy itself. If the policy allows any structure to be built there, then it wouldn't require a second variance. If it's not,
Would the applicant, well, I would prefer that we took the,
if you give me 5 minutes to at least discuss with staff and find out, a little bit.
okay.
And we can let them.
I'll
It
make
may
a
not
motion-
resolve it, but-
I'll make a motion for a 5-minute recess
Yeah.
so that staff can confer.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We will reconvene at 8:05. delay, just make a note for the record, it's 8:12, we are now back in session. I'll ask the city attorney to relay the direction on the hearing of this case.
Right. For purposes of this case, this case is a request for a variance to allow a structure in the front yard. That's all this board is called upon to weigh in on. That being said, it's my understanding that staff has adopted the city and community development department has adopted a policy beginning this year, the beginning of the year, to consider and I say this with reservations that I was not part of it, and I'm restating the general statement as I understand it, and I'm not intending to make my statement the formal statement of the city's policy, but is essentially to establish that a property that has a plat which shows a 25-foot buffer, which existed prior to the adoption of the 50-foot buffer and 75-foot impervious 50-foot setback and 75-foot impervious buffer or setback. Yeah. That it does indeed have the right to act on the property as if the 25-foot buffer was in place and is the accurate restrictions on the property. With that being said,
if you can finish, and then I want to add on
sure.
to that.
And that there is no request to make a variance to that because according to that policy, there is no violation of that policy. So the proposed structure would not be in that 25-foot stream buffer as shown on the plat in accordance with that policy.
And so a part of that policy is best management practices that says basically any land disturbance or land development activity that may be allowed or permitted within a grandfathered area as described in subsection A1 above must be conducted in accordance with the following best management practices. Appropriate allowances must be made for any disturbance or development that encroaches into the 75-foot impervious setback or 50-foot undisturbed city stream buffer, all paved service. Well, anyway, there's multiple items that have best management practices that have to be done to help protect that area. So it's not just, okay, you get to do whatever you want to up to 25 feet. So I just wanted to include that as that's part of the policy.
Can you state the name of that best, what you just described? Because that could be a condition for us to consider.
Management practices.
Of what?
Of when you construct any land disturbance or land development activity may be allowed with certain, what do I want to say?
It basically is enhanced erosion control
Right, thank you.
practices.
Understand. Who's the authority on it? What's it referencing?
This was created by the staff and city engineer to come up with these best management
So the
practices.
best management practices as defined by the City of Milton Community
Right.
Development.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
all. I just want to know, not my best management practices, right? That's what I'm trying to decide.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Of the City of Milton Community Development.
And a lot of these items, you all have already start practicing when you do grant a buffer variance, especially like on the pools and pool decks, or when people exceed the 20%, you add French drains or flow wells or other things. So it's not that a developer or a builder can just carte blanche do whatever they want to.
So that would
Mitigate
replace the need for us to say, providing, silt fence or barriers or otherwise. The best management practices is more holistic in guiding what that is.
Right, for those items or situations that don't come before you, but only have show a 25-foot undisturbed buffer.
Okay, so in recap, so that the applicant and the public can follow along, it's been the determination that this board can move forward and hear this variance request, and we're only hearing the request as advertised, which is to allow an accessory structure to be constructed in the front yard.
Yes.
Okay. So back. as you'll see in further pictures. Oh, wow. Okay. The location for the proposed structure is, will be the best location based upon the loss of trees, the amount of grading, the fact that there was a previous building in that general location. So we feel like, based upon the location of the primary structure, hugging the rear building setback line, the stream buffers as depicted, the initial and reserve septic system, which are, I think, in your packet on the another site plan that when the house was constructed. This is the most viable location for the structure. So I'm going to, so this is a previous aerial photograph from Fulton County's GIS map that depicts the previous structure. I'm hoping you can see that as I scroll over. So that's where I was stating that this is, for lack of a better term, a replacement structure. So just to give you an idea, Doris Road, where this property is located, this is our subject property. I've highlighted with red clouds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other properties along Doris Road that have accessory structures located in front of the primary residence. So it is a practice on these larger estate lots where you have a horse farm or just a large estate where you need an accessory structure, and a lot of the houses were constructed far away from the road, and it just so happened that the structures had. So we're not proposing something that is not common in this area or in the community. Street view. So you'll see the gate up here. This is where the existing drive was for the previous. You can see part of this pad that was constructed in. Sorry, I don't have a better picture.
Can you stay on this one for a minute?
Yes.
I understand the intended use for this is storage and primarily a storage of a trailer, correct?
That's correct.
That looks to be a corner, perhaps even a blind corner. What's the size of the trailer, getting it in and out of there?
It's actually for a storage building, just mostly for personal items, but also a small workshop and equipment to service the property.
So not necessarily something that you would be going onto and off of Doris Road on a regular basis?
Well, not on a regular basis, but occasionally small trailer that would.
And I'm asking that question, staff can be thinking of public safety has looked into that access point and the edge of the property on a corner.
Right. So the speed limit is 25. So I was told that it's good
Oh, it
enough.
is. Thank you for clarifying.
And sight distance on 25 feet is very, very small.
Move on.
Okay. Just some of the photos of the area, just to give you a background in case you have not been out there. So, in this first one, you can see that this is the area with the least amount of trees. The site is, other than this, completely wooded except for the actual footprint of the house and the septic field. This is the structural design of the footprint of the barn. Please ignore the roll-up door. That is not what is being proposed by the applicant. This is a stock photo and elevations. This is a picture of what he's looking at as far as colors, muted in style. Just wanted to give you a feel and maybe a little more assurance that what we're proposing would fit in with the neighborhood. So, I'm going to try to get the site plan back up on the screen. Okay, so I think as you study the site plan, you can see that I cannot place it behind the primary structure. We have extreme topography. I have streams and septic fields that interfere with my other locations. So I think it's an evident hardship as far as the placement. We're very limited on where we can place it. So we need the variance. I think we've demonstrated with the 7 other properties on Doris Road that it is not something outside of the community standard of the surrounding area. So we wouldn't be creating a hardship to the community or a detriment to the community. The fact that there was a structure there previously, I think, also demonstrates that. So we feel like this is the best location. In reference to the conditions that were set forth by our staff recommendations. The applicant and I talked with the city architect, and our proposed condition is that the plans, the finalized architectural plans, be reviewed and approved by the professional city architect. And it has not been policy in the past that design review board review individual house plans or accessory structures. And that precedence, I think, is a little overreaching. That's the reason we have a city architect, to maintain the standards. There was, I think when you listen, I think it comes forth that the entire board put forth that condition. That was not the case. That was one individual on there. I fully understand his concerns and I appreciate those, but that was not the consensus of the board. That was one individual, and we think the safeguards in place, like any other structure constructed in Milton, where the professional architect hired by the city should, and we have no problem whatsoever with him approving the colors and design standards. You know, we're not seeking to put a flat-roofed metal structure like you might see on the side of the road in our more rural sections of the state for sale. It's not what we're proposing, but to try to send individual homeowners back before design review board several times is not the intent. Talk with some board members. They may come forward with some minimum standards. We're fine with that. But we would ask that if you so desire to approve, that the condition be that the plans, the architectural plans, be approved or reviewed and approved per the city architect. And that's his purview. That's his job. Mr. Rogers, if he wants to add anything, I think I've been long-winded enough. It seems like we've had some very long presentations tonight. I don't see any reason to belabor the point anymore. I will be glad to answer any questions. If there's anything you don't understand, I'll be more than glad to address those. Mr. Rogers, if you have anything to add.
No, I really, we're amenable to those conditions, and, you know, our goal is to put something that's aesthetic to the community, aesthetic to our property, and open to any suggestions that the city architect would provide to us.
I have a couple points. The site plan that was presented, stamped as received March 2nd, 2021, Brumbelow Reese, which was originally dated February 10th, 2021, shows an accessory structure that's 50 by 40.
Yes.
Not 60 by 40, as was in the staff report. So I just want to confirm, you're looking for a 50 by 40. And that's the footprint and location of what you're looking at putting that,
50 by 40 and this location.
Yes.
confirming per that site plan.
That was the information given to me.
Okay. The other item I wanted to clarify use in that it would be for storage purposes, not housing animals or livestock,
No.
and not used as a living quarters or a guest house. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure there's somebody here who would like to speak in opposition.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And then the last question I have, Mr. Reese, was on a separate drawing that was submitted also from Brumbelow and Reese with the topo.
Yes.
And the more detailed drawing, it does make reference to a flood zone.
Yes.
But I can't identify.
You know, this variance setback, or I'm sorry, variance site plan is not as detailed as the follow-up, like the land disturbance permit. So it's not necessarily a condition on that. That's why I added additional information to give you. I think that plan also shows the initial and reserve septic system.
Right, and I don't want to throw anyone for a
Okay.
curve here. I just want to make sure, for the record and for public's purpose, if staff could please confirm there aren't any issues with locating an accessory structure in a flood zone.
We're going to be outside of the flood zone.
You are.
Yes.
So can you please, or can staff please put this
The plat.
so that I can understand, but even so, can staff please confirm, are there any restrictions to putting an accessory structure, not housing animals or used as a guest quarters, guest house, in a flood zone? There are no restrictions to that.
We don't have any.
Okay.
The structure can be raised and the condition can be mitigated.
And Mr. Reese, if you could please identify, what,
All right. So
for me anyhow,
Okay.
the flood zone, if you could shift it up a little bit to where the accessory, there you go.
Okay. So I think what you're looking at here is the cross-section,
Yes, sir.
and it gives an elevation, 989, 91, and that is the elevation. So this flood cross-section is just showing the location as you go up and down a stream, the gradient changes. So the elevation on a stream as opposed to a lake or a body of water, that would stay the same. On this one, you'll note, I'm going to slide it. So here's another cross section, and you'll notice that it's 981.80. So these are identifiers. So this 989.91. So you need to find the 990 contour, which is what I'm trying to.
Well, actually, for our purposes, the structure is going to be at the 1020 and above.
Yeah, so yes. So you'll see the 1020 contour that I'm tracing here. So we're going to, in fact, be more than 30 feet in elevation outside of the floodplain.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions for staff or the applicant before I move to public comment?
I've got a question for the applicant.
Sure.
On the structure and the plans that you provided, what is the siding material that's on there?
What was the question again?
Siding. What type of siding?
Well, we're open to everything, but we're looking at more of a kind of a wood siding, maybe whether it be a board and batten or something that's typically found in the area.
In our discussion with his city architect, he expressly stated that he did not want metal siding. He wanted either a wood or a fibrous cement type, and the applicant was in complete agreement with that.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions for the applicant or staff before I move to public comment? Have a seat, thanks.
The public comment.
So let me first announce public comment. We've spent a lot of time on this in the applicant's time in favor. We'll start with public comment that's in favor, and I'd ask you to be judicious with time since we have spent a lot of time with the applicant. Is there any public comment in favor?
No.
Is there any on Zoom? Okay. Then I'll move to public comment that's in opposition, and I'd ask that we be sensitive to a 10-minute time limit with that.
So Robert Brubaker?
If you'd please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Robert Brubaker. I live at 145 Doris Road, which is right across the street from this proposed structure. I'm actually very happy to see Mr. Reese here. He just designed a house for us that we're building across the street from where they want to put this, and that's one of the reasons that I have to object to this. I don't think this property lends itself to the accessory structure, not certainly of the size that he's trying to put in. There may have been a building there at one point, but we've owned this property for 43 years, and there had never been a usable building on that spot. Nothing that I ever saw that was of any sort of workable building. So there were remnants of something there, probably. But the previous tenant, this property was just sold a year ago, and I can tell you they cleared all that property out. So there's no outline of a building, there's no pad, there's no existing structure of any sort that figures into this. If you take that section of the property and you put a 50 by 40 building on it, you're putting basically a house in front of our house that we're building right now. We didn't build and design this house to look out right across the street at another house that's much closer to the road than any of the other accessory structures on that road. If you look at Doris Road all up and down, Mr. Reese highlighted the accessory structures that are there. Everything that's been granted is much farther off the road. And I understand the constraints that they're up against because this building has to go very close to the road. So if you look at the integrity of that street, this doesn't fit. And it's a big structure, and it's going in an area that is very difficult to build in. He's going to have to do a huge excavation to clear this area out and build that kind of a building, and then put an accessory drive in there as well. So
I'd ask just, given, I believe you're the only one speaking up here right now in public comment, or do we have any others? You mind if I ask you a couple questions, sir, since you're across the street? You've heard us contemplate conditions to have the city architect weigh in and dictate, if you will, to all the way up to approving the design.
Yes, sir.
Are there other things that may be done to help mitigate the impact to you in terms of screening, trees, et cetera?
Screening trees at the front, the house next door to them along the property line put up, I guess they're like Tuja greens or the arborvitae trees, because they park some equipment outside the road. Nothing like what's going to happen if this structure is built here. It's going to become, and it was for the previous owner of the place too. He parked a lot of trailers there. He did like a lot of wood splitting, and he piled up a lot of stuff in this corner. But that's why I say this has never been a workable structure in this corner of the lot. And to me, it just doesn't lend itself to a buildable site. And it is so close to the road that you talked about the street. And I don't want to bring this up, but we've had a few deaths on that road, people getting killed by joggers. We've had cars fly up and down that road. This is the same road that Joe Lockwood lives on, our mayor. He's well aware of the speeding problem on this road and the problems that we've had. And it is on a curve. And it is a blind curve. And there have been people killed not far from there.
So do you feel there could be any mitigation, meaning protections for you, like landscape screening, that would help make this project less imposing for you?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments?
No, sir. I'll keep it brief. That's what
Thank
my
you for,
thoughts are.
it's
on
hard to
this whole
come
thing.
and express opposition as a neighbor, so
Sure.
I appreciate that.
I've never met the Rogers. I didn't know him till just now. But like I said, we've been here 43 years. We're building a brand new house that literally looks, if you look at the pictures, this is right out the front windows of that new house that Mr. Reese built. It's a beautiful house. We weren't planning on looking at a 40 by 60 barn. Now, granted, if it's done to his standards, which I know what they are, they're phenomenal. But it's still not what we had planned on, and we still have to object to it. We just are not comfortable with it.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
No.
With that, the applicant has an opportunity to make a closing comment before we would move to a motion. And if we could,
Yes. I've spoke with the applicant. He is fine with conditioning that there would be some trees, a tree planting screen installed between the street and the structure.
okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Are there any questions for staff before we would move to a motion?
I just have a question about the existing graded driveway, whether that is being used. And that's one of the reasons for keeping the barn in this location. You know, is that usable? Is that something they're using? Because that would be two driveways, just one.
If staff could comment, there's a gated area on the fence, but go ahead if you would.
Yeah, right now that access is going really nowhere because it's just empty lot right there, empty corner over there. They have a separate gate and entrance for the house.
So they're not going to use that existing graded driveway?
They might use it, yeah. Yeah.
That seem like more dangerous access point right here at this?
That's something for us to weigh and consider, certainly.
I just have a question on this DRB request. I didn't get a chance to watch the video of their meeting. I'm wondering if anybody can comment or I mean, it seems like an unusual request. We haven't had that request before. Was there something particular in that meeting that brought this up? Can anybody comment on? We heard from the applicant, but I mean, from us, was there something
I
in
watched
particular?
it.
Was there something in particular there?
Just on the plan for the barn that he commented was stock, like a stock. It shows that a metal would be used. So that was the opposition, that he didn't want a metal building.
And since then, this city architect has obviously been in discussion with the applicant, and it would be more customary, I think, Don, to your point, that we would have the city architect do those formal reviews and not the DRB. Right. But
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
To be honest, I just texted Bob, and that's not what, he would always support whatever the DRB recommended. I mean, obviously, you can make another recommendation for
Sure,
a
but
condition.
our historically, customarily, as a board, we've had the city architect do the architect reviews. We're certainly taking into consideration the staff comment, but that's historically what we've done. And thank you for calling out the reason this was brought out originally, which is the fact that it was originally conceived or a concept as a metal building, which is evolving in design. Any other questions before we move to a motion? Okay. With that, I'll make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second. I'm going to make a motion to approve V21-08 with the following conditions. 1, landscape screening to buffer the structure from Doris Road to be approved by the city arborist. 2, for the site plan by Brumbelow and Reese, survey dated 2/10/2021, received by the city 3/2/2021, to indicate size and location of proposed structure. 3, housing of animals, livestock, and use as living quarters guest house are prohibited for this structure. 4, adhere to best management practices according to the City of Milton Community Development during construction. 5, building plans and architecture to be approved by the city architect.
Is that the end of your motion?
Yes.
Second?
I'll comment just regarding our 4 variance considerations. This is given, which I'll go in order. The spirit and intent of the ordinance in terms of putting accessory structures in the front, in my opinion, as in my interpretation, I should say, has a different application in a large lot in a rural equestrian working farm setting. Not necessarily intended to apply as strictly in those uses. Number 2, there are significant, extraordinary, and exceptional situations pertaining to this piece of property and how it's encumbered by steep slopes and grade changes as well as stream buffer, making this the most optimal site location for a structure which was previously used in some similar fashion, with land clearing already have taken place in that area. In terms of the substantial detriment to the public good in surrounding properties, as noted, the surroundings generally support this type of use, and we've put some mitigation in to address the opposition from the neighbor across the street. And number 4, public safety, health, and welfare are secured and substantial justice are done. I believe with the minimal usage the restricted use, I should say, of this project, I don't foresee that being a public safety issue on the road.
I am concerned about this second driveway. Is that be in there as far as public safety? I know that's not what we're talking about.
What would be
barn?
What would you like to address with that?
I don't know, that maybe that needs to adjust with. I know this is
As a
on
condition to have city staff weigh in regarding the
safety.
entrance and egress for that structure? Are you making that?
From Doris Road, yeah.
From
That's
Doris
it.
Road.
Todd, can I add a point here?
Sure.
We spoke about the challenges of the topography on the site, and how are they going to access that structure if we restrict that location that's there, and with minimal usage on that, even if he was taking a right out of there, I think it would be less impactful, potentially. And the gate's already there, so it's been there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not here to solve or be professionals in that regard. I don't necessarily, we're in discussion, right? So whether public safety might recommend that the entrance is moved further up Doris Road, away from the blind corner some, it wouldn't seem to be much of a hardship because nothing really exists there except for a gate. Or they may go so far as to say connect with the existing driveway. I don't know that there's really a whole lot of harm in having another check and balance with someone to review that, other than us. So are you okay with me taking the liberty of phrasing an amendment?
Yes.
Entrance and egress onto Doris Road to be reviewed by public safety, Milton Public Safety, to determine optimal. Public Works, sorry. Public Works, that's what I meant. To determine optimal access from Doris Road. That is the motion.
That's item number 6 on there. Is that okay?
Motion to add an item 6.
Yes.
As an amendment.
Second.
Is there discussion? And we will vote on item 6 before we vote on the primary motion. So I'll restate, the motion would be to have Milton Public Works review access or accessory structure onto Doris Road. All those in favor of amending to add condition number 6, Milton Public Works to review accessory structure access onto Doris Road, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. So the amendment to add condition 6 passed. The original motion, we'll now move back to the original motion, which is to approve with 5 conditions. I'll paraphrase.
6 now.
Which would now be 6. Thank you. I'll paraphrase the conditions. 1, landscape screening to buffer the structure from Doris Road. 2, per the site plan received by the city March 2nd, 2021 by Brumblow and Reese. 3, housing of animals or use as living quarters are prohibited. 4, adhering to best management practices according to the City of Milton during construction. 5, building plans and architecture to be approved by the city architect. And then 6, Milton Public Works to review accessory structure access onto Doris Road for safety. All those in favor?
Discussion on that?
Sure we can. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for
I just
reminding
want to make the statement that it seems to me a 40 by 50 barn that close to the road, I can see why particularly the neighbor across the street would be upset with that. It seems quite large to be right out there in front. Bothers me that we would approve such a large structure, accessory structure, and I'll just state my concern about that. It seems rather large for the intended use of the road. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving with 6 conditions, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
The motion passed 4-1. Good luck with your project, and please stay in close contact with the city on the conditions that we've identified. And please be neighborly. Welcome to Milton. The next item on our agenda would be item number 7, consideration of appeals and secondary variances. Do we have any appeals or secondary variances?
No.
Item number 8 would be old business. Do we have any old business? Don't believe so. Number 9 is new business, which we do have a discussion regarding staff recommendation on a potential new condition to consider for cases requiring as-built surveys.
So thank you for this opportunity to vet this idea that came out of a staff discussion regarding as-built surveys in certain circumstances that we feel that would benefit property owners as well as citizens in general. For instance, if...
Excuse me.
Can you guys... Oh.
Mr. Rogers? Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, go.
Thank you. Go ahead, Robin.
Okay. So, for instance, if when you approve a variance for a setback and it goes from, let's say, 25 to 20 feet on the side setback, you could additionally ask them to do an as-built foundation survey to make sure that they in reality are building where it's been approved, because there have been circumstances in the past. I know that when there was a mistake, even with an approved variance, where they were granted X and then they went further into the encroachment and then had to come back again. It's not often, But also it helps just to make sure that we're able to enforce what you all as a board approves for variances. So that is what we're suggesting to be done.
An example of that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We've had situations, I think this is an application where you're looking for us to consider as-built surveys where, for example, a pool may be built right up to the 50-foot undisturbed buffer. And we put in mitigation that says, put a fence so you don't encroach. But it may be appropriate in those cases to ensure that an as-built survey indicates that they actually are out of that 50-foot undisturbed.
Correct. Right.
And you're referencing to do that at the foundation stage?
Right. So we
Couldn't
would know
catch it early.
before they went vertical. So, there would be less, if there was a little bit of, they could fix that problem fairly quickly.
So on larger scale projects or where there's sensitivity with encroachment, you might be introducing those as a recommended condition for us?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You being staff, sorry.
Yeah. And then, and basically the as-built survey of the site shall be required prior to issuance of any form of certificate of occupancy. Obviously we would look at it way before that point, but, and the as-built survey shall be signed and sealed by a registered professional surveyor from the state of Georgia. So it can't just be Mr. Smith out there kind of taking his tape measure and saying this is where it is. It has to be done by a licensed surveyor. Also, another suggestion was in regards to land disturbance, any land, well, this is for us, I'm sorry, this was just in policy for the department. So this is what applies to you all with variances. Basically, for any structure that is to be built within, the suggestion was within 10 feet or less of a setback, buffer, easement, or property line, the building foundation and property line shall be staked in the field prior to scheduling foundation inspection. I think that's where we're going toward in general for items that don't even come before you. We're kind of socializing this idea. But I think the first step we came up with is for the board, when you do approve variances with reduction of setbacks or location of your example of a pool in a 25-foot non-impervious, to require an as-built survey. So we'd just like to get your input or thought on it.
Good. Another question for you. So how does this policy stack up to other city governments around us in terms of how they're handling it?
So the city of Roswell actually requires all newly built structures to have an as-built, whether it's 50 yards away from the property line or whether it's 5 inches from the property line. I do know that they require that. Other jurisdictions, I believe Decatur does, because they have such small parcels typically. So it's not uncommon for it to happen. So
I would agree. It'll help us make a decision quicker.
Well, and it'll help the projects get off track, and then we're having to revisit additional variances. That's really the intent.
yeah, that's the intent. Yeah.
Be that they've already received their variance, they're going about their work, and then at some point they're getting a survey
Right. So
prior
when you do,
to.
right. So if they get let's say they got a variance to build a house at 20 feet instead of 25 feet. So they go through the process of getting a building permit. We review it. We say that one of the conditions of approval of the building permit would be that they have to provide an as-built survey of the foundation. So that's just their typical process of building a structure. So they would be told on the front end that this was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. You are required prior to going vertical on your building to provide us with a survey, as-built survey by a licensed surveyor. So
is that something that would need to be in the motion?
correct, if you guys so choose to apply this, yes.
So we would have discretion in applying it.
Yeah.
Is
I
staff
like it.
applying this in general to
Not yet.
building permits? Is your intent to have that in terms of homes, make sure homes are
I
sited
think
where they're
we're
supposed
going
to.
that direction,
Okay.
but Bob, just, the community development director, just didn't want to go cold turkey, so to speak, and just require it in every situation until we kind of socialize this and kind of get the developers used to it, the idea, so.
I personally like the intent in terms of avoiding us and the applicant getting off track and then creating more work. I also like that we would have some discretion in applying it, because not every case necessarily
Right.
would need to apply for, because it is an additional cost.
Not cheap.
Right.
We've had cases before that have come to us because there was an encroachment that was there, and they were trying to clear a title on it. So this would minimize that from happening.
Yes.
We catch it earlier.
Yes, non-conforming issues where we have to then work, your hand is maybe a bit more forced than we'd like to be. Don, any comment?
No, it sounds good. I'd have to, can see how it works. I'd have no problem doing it, no.
Discretion of our board. Okay.
Okay.
Does that give you
Yep,
enough feedback?
that's
And then if there's no other new business, I'm assuming staff is working with our newest member and getting her set up with email?
As already said.
Oh, man, overachiever.
Our
Great.
city clerk is doing a great job of orienting our new members, so we can give kudos to Tammy, so,
Fantastic.
and, yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
I know, yeah,
Now
we
we
couldn't
can.
hear it all.
Oh, really? Wow, okay. I was just wondering if we were going to be doing another training at some point. I think those are good
Right.
well, maybe with COVID. that's-
Right, I think most of the training has gone online, but we would be happy to look into additional training if that's what the board would like to see.
You know, I was going to I was going to suggest, given how so much has moved online, are there things as we bring new board members on that
Yeah,
are
we'll
digitized
look
that we
into
could
that.
share?
I believe the ARC does have some, I've seen them advertise some classes.
Stream buffer stuff is, certainly something that is a sensitive topic that we've heard from our city attorney on. Maybe we record that next time so we can reuse that. Okay. And,
Yep, we'll
and
get
in
back
terms
with
of
you on that.
access to, just basic things like access to our ordinances through the city website. I mean, those are digitized. We used to carry a big binder. So I guess if you have questions on that and access to things, or you feel you need additional training,
Yeah, just
I would
ask
speak up
Shuba or
to
I.
Robin and Shuba and let them know.
Okay.
I gave her a nice book. I don't know if she's read it.
Oh, I
to
read
help-
it.
Cover to cover.
Yeah.
I never got a book like that.
I have one more, so if you guys want to find
Fight
I
over
think
it.
years ago, Angela had those books for the members, so I have one more if you're just desperate to have one.
We'll share, Robin.
Okay. It's not very big, so.
Hodge, can you help us out here?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.